What is up, everybody, and welcome to technically the first video on this channel. The only thing I've ever uploaded on this channel was a video package, and I kind of want to start uploading on this channel more, so I'm going to start making these kind of videos, maybe some custom showcase, some unboxings, and more videos like this. But trying to make this intro not too long. Basically what this video is just showing the whole process of making this custom. I'm going to be making a Kyle Fletcher custom, so it's basically like a start to finish, showing the whole process. I already took the legs off of this Austin Theory, sanded down this one boot, sanded this down, and primed this Kyle Fletcher head scan. But I sanded these down because we're going to be painting them white. These are the legs I'm going to be using. I'll get into the formula in a second. But if you do like this video and you want to see more of it, tell me in the comments below, and I will definitely do more of these if you guys do enjoy it. But let's just get into the formula. So basically what I'm using is a head scan from Craniac Studios, an Elite, I think 101 Austin Theory body. I took the legs off of that because we're going to be using the legs from this figure. This was actually a Bo Dallas, but I swapped, I think these are Ric Flair legs onto them. I was going to use a Bo Dallas crotch piece to avoid the painting, but it seems like no torso really wants to go on there, so I'm just going to be painting this Austin Theory body. So yeah, that's the legs. These are boots from, I think, a top pick Seth Rollins, the Dusty Rhodes top picks. These are from, I think, the Ultimate Edition, yeah, the Ultimate Edition CM Punk. So basically, like I said, I already primed this. I'll get into painting that in a second. So what I'm going to start off by doing is sanding this down because I'm going to have to spray paint this white with some primer. I'll show you the primer I use when I do that. But yeah, so I'm just going to start sanding this. Sorry for the kind of lame setup. So let's just get the sanding and we'll cut to that. Alright, so I'm kind of stealing the Figure Dude's video style here, but he's great. Go check him out. But into the custom, I'm sanding here because if you don't know why I'm sanding, it just gives the paint a little better stick to it. If that makes sense, the primer that I'm going to use, it just kind of helps by sanding off the previous paint and then going over it with like an alcohol swab or just maybe even some water. I haven't tried that, but I'm sure an alcohol swab would work best. And I know some people do this process with a Dremel, but I'm not that good at using one, so it'd probably just leave a bunch of bumps and ridges in it. So yeah, you're going to want to sand these down as best you can, and then afterwards go over with some alcohol. As you can see right here, I'm trying to get as much paint off as I can. But yeah, anything you're going to paint over, unless it's just a small little decal, like if it's already on some black trunks and you're trying to paint over it with black just to get rid of it, you're not going to want to sand that down. Definitely don't sand down the head scans. If you're trying to paint a head scan, don't sand that down. But in this case, the original base of the trunks is navy blue and yellow, and I'm trying to paint it white. So you're going to want to sand that down real good, prime it, and then paint it white. I don't know what exact grit sandpaper this is, but I know it's on the higher side. Don't use the lower grit sandpaper. That'll just mess up the figure real bad. And other than that, not much to be said about the sanding process. Just get off as much paint as you can. Doesn't have to be all of it. Just as much as you can. Okay, now that you have your crotch piece or whatever you were sanding done, you're going to want to go ahead and take an alcohol wipe. Just, to get the extra dust and stuff off of the figure. If you saw in the time lapse, I was using a paintbrush, a dry paintbrush, to get the extra dust off. Because when you're priming, painting, you don't want that dust on the figure. If you want your paint to stick good, it's all about the kind of paint you use and the amount of prepping you put into a custom. Alright, so now that we got this sanded and wiped off with alcohol, you're going to want to take your painter's tape. But we're going to be using this to tape off the torso because you do not want any primer on this torso. For a cleaner result, you're going to want to tear it into little pieces. And there we go, there's the first piece on. With each piece, let me see if I can find it. You're gonna want to take a toothpick and kind of get it in the ridges of the torso. Sometimes you might want to go back over it because you'll miss a spot. If you do it in just one big strip like this, you might miss a few pieces, you might cover whatever you're trying to spray. So definitely don't do that. Do it in small pieces. Remember, if you're making a custom like this, you've got to have at least a little bit of patience. And also, I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to come across as, a know-it-all, or I think I'm the best at making customs. This is just stuff I would have liked to learn when I first started customizing. This is probably going to be the only video that goes this much into detail about making customs, just because this is what it's meant to be. It's just for people who want to start making customs, but don't really know what they have to do, what they need. Or if you're someone like me and just likes to see the process of making these customs. I know a lot of people don't know the work that goes into these, but some of them take a lot of time to complete and finish. And obviously, I'm not the best customizer, but like I said, this video is just for the people who want to get into customizing, or they just like seeing the process of someone making the customs. Okay, so now, once you have this part done, you are going to want to apply a longer strip right here. Now, this isn't really doing anything to cover up the torso. This is just making sure all the paint, or not the paint, the tape right here stays on. Once you have that done, this is something I started doing recently. You're gonna want to take some clear plastic wrap and just wrap the upper part of the torso. If you're wondering what this does, this just prevents overspray from getting on the torso. This is what it should look like. I'm gonna add a little bit more plastic down here by the lower part of the torso. Got that completely wrapped up. Now I'm gonna take a little bit more of painter's tape just to make sure that plastic doesn't go anywhere. Now you might think this is a little overkill, but rather be safe than sorry. Don't want to get any paint on that torso. Also, I'm sure there's easier ways to do this. This is just how I do it. I know a lot of people would just prefer to take the torso off and just paint it like that, or just use a completely white crotch piece. But I suck at torso cracking. That is the thing that I am the worst at. And once you're done wrapping the plastic and some tape, make sure there is nothing covering the crotch piece, as if you spray it to the crotch piece, it will just stick to it. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna prime this. So if I lift my phone up here, this is the primer I use. You can get this at Walmart. I don't know if this is the best primer you can use, but it's working pretty good for me. You want to make sure if you're getting a primer, it says plastic on the bottle or the can. When you're looking for primer, you don't even have to get this one, but just make sure it says that it covers plastic on it, or else it will not work. So what you're going to want to do with the primer, you're going to want to take it outside and light coats over the crotch piece. If you have to, do one coat over it, very light, let it dry, go back over it with another coat, and keep doing that until it's completely covered. So yeah, I will cut to after I spray it. Okay, the crotch piece is all sprayed. You're going to want to leave it for 6 to 12 hours to dry. And then once you're done with that, do not be an idiot like I was. And remember to sand down this piece right here. You're going to want to sand down. That is, if you are going to pose around with this figure, you're going to want to sand down this piece right here. Just so when you move the leg up, it doesn't catch on to this and rub the paint. Same goes for over here on this piece. Sand it down a little bit, not too much. What I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be painting this white because, as you can see there, it's still a little see-through, and you don't want to make the primer layer too thick. So we're going to go over this as paint in about 6 to 12 hours. It's already starting to dry up a little bit, maybe sooner than that. Okay, so it's been about 4 or 5 hours since I sprayed this, and as you can see here, it is pretty dry. But since I'm an idiot and I don't know how to customize, forgot to prep this. You might have saw me sand down the surface of it, but I gotta sand down this now. So let's bust out the Dremel. Okay, I'm gonna make this quick because there's gonna be a lot more talking in this video, but I'm basically sanding this down just so when you move the leg up, it doesn't rub the paint, and also just so it looks better. Also, I want to mention, don't sand it down too much or else it will make the legs really loose. And then once you're done with your Dremel, you go back over it with some sandpaper, once again, just to make it look better and also mainly to smooth it out. Okay, it's about a day later. Everything's dried, as you can see here. It's all dry, and now it is time to paint it. Now, usually what I would do is I would get my Citadel paint. These are made for the paint guns, but they work really well using them with paintbrushes. So usually I'd use that, but I am out of the white Citadel paint, so I just use the Vallejo. This is the next best option. You can get this at Hobby Lobby. That's where I got this one. As you can see here, $4. It's a little cheaper than this. This usually costs $7, and you can only get this online, or if you have a paint store near you, maybe a comic book shops. I got this one actually at a comic book shop. But usually you'll get them on eBay or websites. This one you can just go Hobby Lobby and get it. Okay, ignore where the paint is. I don't have anything fancy like a paint tray, or I probably did have a bottle cap. Probably just didn't feel like finding it. But I'm not going to really tell you how many coats you're going to need. That's really up to you. However many coats you think you're going to need, that's probably how many you should apply. But don't glob the paint on. That would just look really bad. You're going to want to do it in thin layers, like I said, however many you think you need. And if you're using apple barrel, I think in this clip I'm probably yapping about the Citadel paint, but you're going to want to use apple barrel. You're going to want to water it down with a cap or a paint stirrer, if those are things. Whatever you can stir paint in, you're going to want to water the apple barrel paint down, but it's just not as good quality as the model color or the Citadel. So definitely, if you can, try and use one of the paints in the back, but if you just don't want to, I guess you can use apple barrel paint, water it down, but yeah, light coats. With the white paint, usually it's easier to see the streak marks from the paintbrush in, so that's always going to look a little weird. And the white paint usually tends to get a little more dirtier, so you're going to want to be careful with that. Or, like I'm going to do, just go over it when you're done with one more coat, cover all, whatever gets on the paint. Other than that, you're going to want to use smaller paintbrushes if that's not obvious enough. Yapping again in this clip. But yeah, use smaller paintbrushes, and between coats, I would say about 20 minutes, depending on the paint you're using. If you're using apple barrel, maybe about an hour. But if you're using any of the two paints in the back, about 10 minutes. Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes, so I should be able to go ahead and paint the second coat on this. And I did clean off the paintbrush. You're going to want to do that every time after you're done painting, just so you don't waste any paintbrushes. So, more painting. There's going to be a lot of this in the video, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And I think the next thing we're going to paint is the boots. Alright, while the crotch piece dries, I'm going to explain how to swap your lower legs if you do not know already. So basically, what you're going to want to start off by doing is heating up some water, if you are using water, for about 5 minutes. These are going to be really easy to pop off. You're going to slide the peg out through this. So the peg would just be able to slide out through there once you take this off. And then what you're going to want to do, this is what I find the easiest. You're going to want to take this, carve this hole out a little bit. You're going to want to carve it out not too much to the point where the peg would slide out, but just enough to give the peg room to slide in. I'm just explaining how I do it and how I think it's the easiest. I've tried doing it without carving out the hole and with a blow dryer. Both times, it's really not fun to do. With this way, to me, it's almost as easy as a leg swap. Basically, you're gonna want to grab the peg, push it on through, take your thumb, and jam it in. Alright, here they are. These are what they look like. So now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let these sit here for a second, cool off. I'm getting paint all over them. Sit here, let them cool, and then I will paint them. Alright, now we're painting the lower legs. If you're wondering why I didn't just paint them while they were off the top part of the piece, I usually, when I'm doing lower leg swaps, I put them in hot water. I don't really like using the blow dryer just because for me, it's harder that way. So when I put it in the hot water, I don't want it messing up with the paint. So I just opted to paint it when they're on. I did, however, sand down the lower leg, just so there wasn't as much paint rub. But mostly the knee pad covers it and you won't really see any of it. I was wrong about what we were painting next. Now we are painting the boots. I did sand this boot, just not as much as the other one. I actually sanded the other one like almost a month ago, before I was even gonna make this video. But yeah, I'm gonna make sure to cover this boot nice because it's kind of hard to cover yellow. Not as hard as covering a black, but you can still kind of see it with, I don't know, like 3 layers. So I think I did 5 layers over this boot. So yeah, for the boots, you're definitely going to want to do a couple more layers depending on the color. But other than that, make sure to sand down the joint on the boot so there's no rub. This one was already white, so I didn't really sand down much. And I'm probably repeating myself a lot in this video, but I can't stress it enough. If you don't want any paint rub, just make sure to sand. Okay, so now we're in the kitchen. We're putting the legs on the crotch piece. I put some Dragon Lee knee pads on here already. I'm using the blow dryer just to not mess with any of the paint on the lower legs. And there's one leg, and there we go. Now we're putting on the boots. This is after I sealed everything. If you're putting on any parts that you painted, you're going to want to seal it beforehand just so there's no paint chippage when you go to put it on. Alright, here's the paint I use. We're painting the head scan and doing the decals. I didn't get a lot of footage of painting the head just because there's a lot of small details that you have to look very closely if you want to get right. But if you are watching this video to learn, I linked a video down in the description on going into detail about painting the head scans. So that's down there. I also linked the video on how to do the decals just because I didn't really show much, so you'll probably learn more just by watching the video in the description. But getting back into the video, I'm painting the base layer of the head scan right here. That's about all I got of footage-wise for this. So, painted the base layer, really light coat. I think for this head, I did about 5 layers just to get it right. Really just depends on what paint you're using for the amount of layers you want to do. If you're using Apple Barrel, I think that would only take about 2 layers. Never really used Apple Barrel, but for this paint I'm using, it's really thin, so it should only take up to 5 layers to complete. Alright, moving over to the decals. This stuff right here is Micro Sol and Micro Set. The blue bottle is Micro Set. It just kind of preps the plastic for the decals so they stick better. And Micro Sol is the stuff you use to kind of loosen up the decal. If you need to get it in some creases or if you need to move it, you'll use Micro Sol and it'll work perfectly. Now, you don't need this stuff. If you're just making customs to put on display, just use some water. But this stuff, if you're going to pose them like me, you use Micro Set and Micro Sol, just makes it stick better. Everything on this figure was Ghost White decals, which if you don't know what that is, just a clear background, so it was really easy to put on. Didn't have to blend the decals at all, and they went on really smooth. And like I said earlier, I put a video down in the description going into full detail about putting on decals and applying them. But right here, I use a sponge just to make them suction, if you will. And after I'm done putting on all the decals, I'll usually go over it with a hair dryer. And then after that, I'll apply the Mod Podge just so they stick a little more. The hair dryer is optional. I only use it because it's heat to a decal, so it'll make it suction more to the plastic. And yeah, that's all I really gotta say for the decals. If you want full detail, go to the video in the description. It should have everything you need to know about putting on decals. And here we go. Here is the final result of the Kyle Fletcher custom. I'm so glad with how this turned out. Looks way better than I thought. The cloth arm sleeve, all the decals went on perfect. I gotta get that little smudge off, but I just love how this turned out. But yeah, this was super fun to make. If you guys found this video helpful or just enjoyed watching it, please let me know, and I will 1000% do another one, because this video was really fun to make, and I like helping people that really want help with making customs if they're trying to get into it or if they're just trying to get better. Like I said, I'm not the best, but I try, and I feel like that's all that matters. So if you could use anything that I find helpful, and it helps you, that's really the only reason I'm making this video. But if you did enjoy, please tell me, and I will make another one. If I do make another one, it will be on my second channel. It's on the screen now. I'm gonna upload a lot more in there, maybe some custom showcases, more of these if you guys want. So if you guys enjoyed and watched all the way through, thank you very much. And I think the next video will be the triple cage match, so stay tuned for that.